After winning an unprecedented domestic treble, Pep Guardiola and Manchester City will look to Europe as the obvious place for improvement on last season. The club won back-to-back titles for the first time in their history, but Guardiola still isn't satisfied. In his words, he will dream next season of fighting for the 4 titles. But with a squad already stacked with some of the world's top players, what should Manchester City do next to develop? We've spoken to fans and journalists, the people close to the club, to get their view. Let us know yours in the comments below.
Keep Pep Guardiola. That would be a kind of important thing, which I think is going to happen. Crumbs, I suppose, if you were being picky, you would say that they actually have more issues to address this summer on the back of what they've achieved this year than they had last summer when, they didn't achieve quite as much. And I say that because Vincent Kompany has obviously retired. He's the leader in the dressing room.
It's weird to think there's still actually more that we could get. We could go for the Champions League, something that's obviously we've not had before as City fans, and it's the one that I want now. Like I've said previously, and a lot of City fans have probably backed this up, that to me the league is always the most important. I still believe that, but now having done the back-to-back titles thing, I actually want the Champions League now.
People built up the Champions League so much through the season that it felt a little bit like, I remember walking home after we lost to the Tottenham in the second leg. Or we beat Tottenham in the second leg and still went out. After that, it felt like the season was over, and you had to kind of rebuild yourself to remember that we're in all these other competitions. So yeah, that's the missing piece of the puzzle. It's got to be the Champions League next season or the season after. That's the next big goal. That's the next big target. And I think a lot of Liverpool fans and a lot of Manchester United fans would have you believe that this season wasn't the success that it was, but we lifted 4 bits of silverware. It wasn't a quadruple, but we did win 4 bits of silverware. And that's so important. It's such a shift in what the club's about in terms of what we're about now and where we've come from and where we're going to.
What I was impressed by with City this year was how they were able to refocus, because I wondered whether if they went out of the Champions League, and I didn't think it was beyond the realms of possibility, was if they went out of the Champions League to Tottenham, whether they could refocus because the devastation would have been so great. But they did refocus. They scraped through against Tottenham in the league, then they scraped through against Burnley in the league. They beat Man United away from home, and then they won a tough game against Leicester at home. Well, they did well given that they wanted to win the Champions League. They must have been hurting.
It's got to be the Champions League, right? If Guardiola decides to sort of basically forget about the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, so the lesser trophies, cups, and sort of, tries to really save energies of all his A-listers, which is kind of 1 to 11 plus maybe 1 to 22 if you want to go that far, but you understand what I mean, then I think they'll have a far better chance. That might sound like an obvious thing to say, but he's actually one of the few managers who does really try and win every competition. If you look at the team Klopp put out when they went to Wolves in the FA Cup, when they got knocked out, for example, that was a scratch team.
We spoke to Guardiola collectively and also individually before the FA Cup final and he was outlining the tiny things that make a difference at the highest level. So he's saying, a VAR goal against Tottenham, if VAR had not been in place, then Man City would have gone through this year. Last year, if VAR had been in place, he's convinced that 3 decisions over the course of what turned out to be a fairly one-sided quarter-final against Liverpool that should have gone Manchester City's way and would have changed the whole complexion of that quarter-final. He almost sees in every year that he's not won the Champions League little things that have gone wrong in each 3 semi-finals with Bayern Munich. He sees little things there that would have made the whole difference. I don't think you can say that City have not focused on the Champions League. equally, I don't think you can say if City do focus on the Champions League, that means they will definitely win it, because the fine margins on any particular day can go against you and cause you to fail.
It just feels like unless we win the Champions League, people are going to hold this against us, this idea that we've not reached the level that we have, in my opinion, reached. But people will use that as a way to beat Manchester City. And I think the club, the chairman, the owners, Guardiola himself really want this Champions League. And personally, just as a City fan, I think it'd be a shame the likes of David Silva and Sergio Aguero didn't get the Champions League, that their brilliance and their performances actually deserved. They honestly deserve that level of success and credit, because they've been so good for Manchester City. And the Champions League would be the icing on the cake for their careers.
I genuinely think this is the best team we've ever seen play in England, certainly in my lifetime. And it's hard to sort of pinpoint, because the whole team, it feels like they're one unit and they all play for each other. And we often get branded as this team of mercenaries. But I genuinely don't think that's the case. I think we're like, the way that they interact with each other, there seems to be like a genuine camaraderie there. And to take one piece out or say this piece isn't working, I think the whole machine would fall apart. Vincent Kompany leaving is massive, and I think we probably need to replace him with someone. But it's not even what he brings with his feet, it's his personality and his charisma in the dressing room and what he represents as a leader that you need to replace. And I'm not sure you can buy that. We're going to need to find that somewhere else in the team. And whether that comes from Laporte, maybe it comes from Sterling, maybe it comes from someone we don't expect, maybe it comes from someone like a De Bruyne that's getting a little bit older and has become a senior figure in the team. Maybe it's one of those, but we need to find a character that's going to do what Kompany does, which is just give us that lift when we need it and turn those 1-1s into 2-1s when you're really fighting out for the result. And that's what makes a team champions, I think.
I think I worked out the other day, there's only about 3 teams, or maybe 4, that have ever won 3 on the bounce. That's English championships. And it is United, Liverpool, Arsenal and Huddersfield Town, I believe. And Arsenal and Huddersfield Town a long time ago. There's only one in the Premier League, which is United. So yeah, he might want to do that. But yeah, it's got to be the Champions League. He's going to buy a couple of players this summer. He's going to buy a centre-back. And he's going to buy a defensive midfielder. The defensive midfielder probably, or he'd like it to be Rodri, the guy at Madrid, Atletico. Centre-back I'm not too sure about, but there is a guy there at City anyway, called Eric Garcia. I think he's 17, 18. He got him from Barcelona, B team, La Masia, a couple of years ago.
They've got a potential issue in central midfield with Fernandinho, a year older, a few more injuries. Ilkay Gundogan has seemed to fit into that slot towards the end of the season. They have a problem at left back because Benjamin Mendy didn't do what everybody has thought he was going to do, and he's been injured again. And David Silva's a year older. So there are problems for Manchester City to address, but if they address them in the way that they've addressed every other problem that they've hit, i.e. they have bought an expensive player who's turned out to be the right player, then it's going to be a one-sided competition in the league next year. And it almost needs City to get something wrong to give everybody a chance, because I just don't see Liverpool having another season like they did this season.
It's strange to say that after all the success we've had this season, it's a bit of a transitional period at the moment for Manchester City, because certain players have been synonymous with success at City over the past few years, and watching the likes of like Zabaleta and Yaya leave recently, and now Vincent Kompany in the summer, which still breaks my heart to this day. David Silva will be on his way soon as well, and Fernandinho isn't getting any younger. Aguero's only got maybe a couple of years left before his body starts to ache a little bit. So we need to start looking to replace these older senior players. It's not going to be easy. So many teams struggle to lose such an integral spine and then become the force that they once were. But I'm hoping with Guardiola around to kind of really oversee the rebuilding project of some of these players. It won't be too too bumpy. The road won't be too bumpy. It's going to be very difficult, but we've got to start to look forward now. We're already linked to centre-backs in general. So many names have been thrown around, like De Ligt and Maguire and so on. Obviously, they're part of the kind of long-term plans to replace Kompany, and also Mendy wants to go. And then maybe we'll see eventually someone like Phil Foden develop into David Silva's there. But I will expect at some point we'll bring in a midfield to replace him, and definitely for Fernandinho. Rodri's been linked quite heavily in defensive midfield. Maybe we'll kind of develop someone else there, who knows. But we're looking over time, maybe not this summer, over the next couple of transfer windows, maybe the next 2 or 3, to replace a whole bunch of players who are getting a little bit older. And we have to accept that the likes of Fernandinho, David Silva and Aguero might not be here in 3 years' time, and they've been so important, and we have to make sure we get the right people in place to replace them.
People are talking about Harry Maguire, and I like Harry Maguire as an England fan. I think he's a real great player. He's good fun. But when you're trying to win a Champions League, do you want someone who's good fun, or do you want someone who's like tried and tested? But you know what? There are big names, and De Ligt would be awesome. But City generally buy well. The last sort of 5 or 6 years, there's been, apart from Eloquim Mangala, the Invisible Man, we've not really had too many bad buys.
We do have some young players coming through that are really highly rated at the CFA, which is just across the road over there. But it feels like it may be, honestly, and this is for someone who's a massive youth fan, it may be a little bit too soon, if we're being honest. Eric Garcia played a little bit in the Carabao Cup last year and looks really good. And Guardiola does rate him a lot, but he is still just a kid. And a centre-back is a place where it's hard to get away with kind of naivety and that raw kind of nature of young centre-backs. We've also got a young lad as well called Taylor Howard-Bellis, who's essentially rated as like the best young defender in his age group for England. He's about 17 years old at the moment. He's really good, but once again, he's just a kid.
Gundogan and Sane haven't signed on again, right? And I know for a fact I've been told that they quoted to me was the example of Ozil at Arsenal. They wouldn't be held to ransom, giving a big fat contract because so they wouldn't let any players really go into the last year, which Gundogan and Sane are about to. You know, they'd rather sell them, but the caveat here is if they're looking down the line and thinking there's going to be a transfer ban potentially, they might just work it out and say, look, we'll swallow Gundogan, certainly, going on a free in a year's time to get another year out of him and work out the sort of transfer fee, you know, they will miss out on, thinking, well, you know, it's going to be worth it. But Sane's interesting because Sane, for me, you know, I think he could be better than Sterling. I mean, I watch them all the time. He just seems more of a sound a bit stupid, more of a natural footballer than Sterling. There's something going on there, I think, because he never seems to get picked, you know, for big games. And when he comes on, he tends to have an influence. He won Liverpool this year, right, at their place. I think he got the winner, Sane. So he's got it in him. So there's two who might leave, might not. Don't know, someone like Delph maybe. Mendy's interesting because what's happened with Zinchenko, he was saying in January, Guardiola, that, yeah, we need a new left-back. This Mendy situation is kind of, he didn't use this word, but basically, you know, slightly ridiculous that we don't have a fit left-back for the last 2 seasons. It's cost us 50 million. But what's changed is Zinchenko has come into the team and basically done enough to impress them enough that they're not going to go looking for a fresh left-back. So now, it's an easy thing to say because he's got to stay fit, but you'd effectively have an extra third player there in Mendy, if he is fit, that they haven't had for the last 2 seasons.
I expect City will bring in a defensive midfield player. I expect City will bring in a top-notch centre-half. I expect there will be people like maybe Otamendi who leave. They may fudge left-back and go with Zinchenko and wonder whether Mendy is going to start knuckling down and repay the faith that Guardiola showed in him to sign him in the first place. But other than that, I don't see City, you know, what problems have they got? Well, they're first world problems, aren't they? Because they're issues to do with a squad that is the best squad in the Premier League by, I think, a significant distance. And as I say, they need to get something wrong if anybody else has got a chance.
If Guardiola left tomorrow, the biggest alarm would be, who do you get? Who's going to fill his boots? Because they are so, it is, you know, borderline irreplaceable. And I think it was a bit of a left field choice bringing in Mikel Arteta, but he seems to have like a real impact on the squad. And I think you look at even like Brian Kidd, who sort of represents Old City a little bit and where we've come from a few years ago, and he's been brought through, and he still seems to have his mark on the team as well. And the whole dynamic of the club, it feels like we've still got that little touch of small-time City, like the old City that just on the brink of success, that City. But we've also got this big, mega, super evil City that are just winning stuff. And I think Guardiola represents that. He's big time and he's elite. Arteta is sort of learning, and Brian Kidd's just like, a glimpse of the past. And it seems weird saying that about an ex-United player, but it's just that sort of glimpse of where we were 10 years ago, I think. And it just that melting pot of experience, I think, has a real positive result. I think it keeps us grounded, but also keeps us at that height.
The worst thing about having Guardiola as a manager is that one day he's going to go. He's an absolute genius, and I'm already genuinely terrified of the day that we have to replace him. It's his attention to detail, his savant-like energy towards managing Manchester City and every club he goes to. He's genuinely just a guarantee of trophies, and not many managers in the world can actually say that. I know he has the best players to deal with, and he has a great budget and all that kind of stuff, but he obviously just improves players. He's obviously phenomenal, and I don't know how we can replace him. I'm not sure we can. Like the likes of Barcelona and Bayern haven't replaced that dominance, and I don't think they will do in general.
There's this whole thing about financial fair play, but even if they get crucified for that, I don't see them being, they'll appeal basically. So you're looking at probably a couple of transfer windows if down the line, if that's what happens to them, or out of the Champions League. I can't really see the latter.
It's a really weird one, and I think it's a hard one to talk about as a City fan because I genuinely think we're being singled out, and I think it's quite hard because if you're either feel like you're criticising your own club, or you feel like you're some sort of corporate shill, and you're sort of defending the indefensible or whatever. We don't know what's happened in the offices of the club, and with the financial fair play stuff, we don't know what's going on there, if you know what I mean. So you don't know, I don't know. The journalists who say they know don't know. And I even think UEFA don't really know. And to some extent, I think the club now, I think it's also such smoke and mirrors.
It's a weird time to be a City fan. I've never experienced anything quite like it, because you've got to add a little bit of context. Growing up as a City fan, I was the one that was bullied in the playground by the United fans around me, and I was always the one that was just supporting little old City, and no one ever really paid attention to anything like that. And now we've kind of developed into this global behemoth, like this massive club that everyone takes seriously, that wins things. And obviously we've got owners that there's so many allegations about, and there's all this kind of stuff about sports washing, there's all this stuff about what they've done and how the fans are complicit. And that does annoy me, even being honest. I'm not going to get into the politics of it all, because I don't really have overly strong opinions. I don't think people should have to have strong opinions on it. I'm not going to pretend that our owners are perfect. They're obviously not. And they may be guilty of some things that I don't know about. I'm not going to deny that. I think general football is quite dodgy. Overall, I think it is. I think football's washed with kind of unsavoury characters. And maybe, and I'm not going to say, maybe our owners are some of them as well. But what happened to the idea of football fans just being able to just enjoy football?
I'm not one of these mental conspiracy theorists, but I do think UEFA finds City's rise very troubling, because I think they like that the old elite, and they like that it's the same sort of 7 or 8 clubs that are these are the big clubs. And I think Man City and I think Tottenham to some extent get this kind of like separate treatment, because we're outsiders and we're not worth as much in TV revenue. So I don't think we get treated differently. And I think also our owners, there's a lot of accusations about where they come from and what they get up to in their home country and who they associate themselves with. But you know what? If you're going to call out City and you're going to say, oh, City fans shouldn't go and watch Man City because of who their owners are, you shouldn't watch football. We watch multi-millionaires. Most of them we don't pay tax. We go and watch football teams that are all owned by tax-dodging billionaires. We all go and buy football shirts and football boots made in sweatshops. Mate, football is dirty. Football is like, look at the World Cup and it going to Qatar and Russia, how dodgy that was. Mate, if you want to criticise City, by all means, but A, look at your own club, because unless you support Forest Green Rovers, I bet your own house isn't in order.
Going to be interesting next season though, because he is someone, Guardiola, who's obviously a perfectionist, and he looked worn out, and he basically said after the FA Cup final, which I did, the Watford trouncing, that he was tired, but winning or getting back into it and pre-season will sort of in itself recharge his batteries. But I'll be interested to see if him and his team can do it again, basically, in whatever competition. But yeah, it's got to be the Champions League.
Yeah, they want to win the Champions League. They absolutely want to win the Champions League. I think if you were to give them the option of winning 3 leagues in a row or winning the Champions League, they would take winning the Champions League. I think Guardiola would take that. But I don't think it's an either-or situation. I think it's an opportunity that presents itself, and when you get into April, then you go for it. But I don't think, as proved this year, that success or failure in one thing means that you will fall in another, because the situations don't work like that. I think if they play to their potential in the league, they will win the league because they have the best squad, the best players by a distance. But I don't think the Champions League is about who the best teams are. I think the Champions League are fine margins on any given day, and you can't control them.
It's kind of hard to say what we need to change as a City fan, because we've just watched our team be absolutely ridiculous, raising the level in the Premier League to unprecedented numbers, like 198 points across 2 seasons. And it feels weird to say that we were only basically 1 penalty away in the first leg away from being in the semi-final and maybe in the final. Obviously, there's lots of what ifs and maybes, but it just feels like we're on the route anyway already. Maybe experience, maybe a little bit more gamesmanship will get us there. Maybe we are a tiny bit naive, but it still felt like we played well for large spells of the Champions League. But that one moment when it most mattered, I think Guardiola's teams in general are built for domination in terms of domestically, in terms of leagues, which is why he wins leagues so comfortably in general. And maybe he needs to be a little bit more wily in the Champions League.
I always said that United, if there was a film about football, if like you made football the movie, United would have to be the villains, because United, certainly when I was growing up, United won absolutely everything. And it felt, I always thought that was like greedy. Looking down, I was like, why did they let someone else win something? And Ferguson makes this sort of perfect supervillain. But I think City are sort of doing that. And when you win everything in the way that we do, and we crush teams, you are the bad guys. And initially, I resented that. And I've always tried to defend City. And I've always tried to go, no, man, we're not evil, we're the good guys. But do you know what? It's good to be bad. It's good to be bad. Sometimes.
So that's what those contributors think. Thanks to them for taking part. Let us know your views in the comments below. What should Manchester City do next?